Okay, you don't have to post the tweet. Scott, do you use Streamlabs or what do you use?
I use good old fashioned OBS. No strings attached.
See, I tried to use the original OBS, but for some reason, like my kilobytes per second are awful with the regular OBS. With Streamlabs,
Really?
it stays around like 2100.
Oh, weird. Yeah, I don't have that problem. I'm running about, well, let's see. I do a simultaneous record and then stream in the morning, especially, and that one is the streams at 2500 and the recordings at 5, I think,
Yeah.
5000K. So it's a little CPU heavy, but I don't have any lag issues or anything.
Huh. I wonder why mine, the regular OBS, is just
I don't
it's
know. That's weird.
so slow.
It's possible. There's some settings in OBS for like how much you're using your GPU to do things and not, and that
Yeah.
may make a big difference.
I tried to go through and try to set everything. Like I had a couple of people try to help me out. Even Derek was trying to help me out. You remember Derek? And we could
Hmm.
not get it above like 300 kilobytes a second. I was like, what is happening?
That's really weird.
Yeah, it is weird because I can count on one hand the number of times I've had issues with normal OBS. I still use it, for my show, and very rarely had any problems with it. So I don't know why it's giving you fits.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
you get some funky business going on there, man.
Derek,
Yeah.
you can still come up just a little bit more. You're very
Okay.
quiet.
Check
But
1 2. Check 1 2. Is
there
that good?
you go. That sounds
Okay.
good. All right. Well, I'm gonna come in and play the music, Scott. You won't hear it because I don't have loopback yet, and
It's
I'm
all
getting
good.
that this week. And as soon as that is done, I'll come in and introduce you, and we'll go from there.
Rock on.
All right.
All
Here we
good.
go. Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Greetings, programs, and we are back for another episode of the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins,
My name is Derek Diamond.
and we have a very special returning guest tonight. Hasn't been here in 170 episodes.
Oh my gosh.
Last time you were here, we did episode 100, and it's Mr. Scott Johnson, Mr. Frogpants himself.
Hey, it's good to be here, and that's a long time. I didn't realize it'd been that many episodes, which says two things: one, that's a long time, and two, you guys are very consistent
Yes.
with regular episodes. So nice job.
Last time you were here, we talked about the video game crash of the 80s, which it happened to you tangentially because your dad was really heavily into arcade games back then.
Yeah, it basically wiped us out. We had a business going. He had multiple arcades in town, and all kinds of deals all over the place. And the video game crash of 85 or so, 84, 85 was a death blow to that company, and pretty much
Yeah.
lost all of it. But it brought in a whole new era of home consoles and nobody going to arcades anymore for at least for a while. And
Too bad your dad didn't invest in a Nintendo at the time.
I know, right? I don't know if I told you guys this story back then, but he had designed a full size cabinet, like an arcade cabinet, that you would sit in almost like a plane module, like it would shut you in and you would, play whatever game it was. And it was like unlike anything anybody had seen. You got to understand, like 83, 84, the craziest cabinets were like Tron, discs of Tron or something, where it had a little bit of weirdness going on. For the most part, arcade machines were all sort of the same stand-up sort of thing with the controls out front and the marquee up top and all that. And then the whole thing crashed. You had no money. It all went away. And about a year later, Sega put out their first version of, can't remember which game it was, but they basically had a hydraulic rolling,
Yeah.
cabinet, like the kind that he had designed. And that was a serious bummer. We were
Probably
super
like
ticked about that.
Afterburner or something.
I think it was Afterburner 1, actually. I think you're right. It might have been, what's the one where you run forward and shoot stuff and your little dude jumps around?
Oh.
What was that?
wrong with my brain. That game, Space Harrier. That's it.
Oh yeah. Space Harrier. I like.
It might have been Space Harrier because they also had a weird rolling cabinet for that. But yeah, he had just missed that stuff by like a hair. So
wow.
What are you gonna do?
But one of the big reasons I want to have you on the show is because I've been listening to you since like 2006, I think. Started listening to the Instance, and because you're so heavily into video games like that, it's part of who you are. Is you love video games, you do video game podcasts. You just started a show called Play Retro, which is a retro gaming show much like this one. And I have to ask, why did it take you so long to do a retro gaming show?
Well, I'd been talking about it for years and years and years, and it just never was like, was there time to do it right? Well, we'd have to move some stuff around or have to cancel something or whatever. Like we just never could seem to squeeze in this thing edgewise. And myself and specifically my cohort, Brian Dunaway, super into retro, love old games, love talking about them. So we were always kind of, in this mode of like, well, when there's an opening, let's do this. And we finally decided to make our own opening. We're like, look, we've got this other show where we just talk about indies all day. That thing's like 300 plus episodes. That's a good run. Why don't we retire that thing and replace it with what we want to do with retro coverage? And so we did. And now we're, I think, 16 episodes in, 16 weeks in, and really, really having a good time with it. I'm kind of, it's nice because we're getting to cover stuff that I haven't talked about or played since, oh man, in some cases since I was a kid.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad you didn't do it before now, because the only reason we started this show is because back in 2016 there wasn't any retro gaming shows. And that's what I wanted to listen to. So I was like, well, guess I need to make my own. And if you had been doing it back then, I'd be like, well, I don't need to make one. He's already making one.
Yeah, there was a little bit of there was a moment when we started it where we were like, all right, what is the landscape for this? Because part of the reason the Instance succeeded at the time is nobody was doing, there were 1 or 2 or 3 shows that were sort of Warcraft related, and none of them, no offense to any of them, were very good. They kind of annoyed me. And I wanted to make my own because I didn't like it. I wasn't really thinking about cornering the market or anything. I just thought, well, if the one I want to listen to isn't here, I'll make the one I want to listen to. And so that's what I did. In this particular case, we were like, we know there are other shows out there. What our plan here is to bring our voice to the space and talk about the stuff we love and bring our listeners along with us. And it's worked out really well so far. We're super happy with it. Kind of got our own little tone, our own little vibe, our own little focus, and it's become a little bit of an obsession. I've been playing a lot of old games as a result.
That's what me and Derek love about this show. We get to play all the stuff that we never got to play back then.
Yeah.
And luckily that, this is what me and Derek bonded over a lot, was talking about old video game stuff, because, I'm from the Atari Nintendo era, and Derek came up in the Super Nintendo N64, so it kind of meshed really well with what we wanted to do here on this show.
Yeah, we just did an entire episode on failed 3D games, or 3D mascot games, when we had that transition from 2D to 3D. So the N64, of course, playing a big role in that, but N64 and PS1 games are, whoa, man, there's a real mixed bag there, and some of those games do not hold up. Some of them do. And it's interesting which ones do. It's also interesting to see how Sonic floundered and tried to figure out what it was supposed to do in the new 3D era, especially because the Saturn was like this monster 2D machine and they weren't even thinking about 3D at the time. So those kinds of discussions are really fun in retrospect, and we're having a ball with it.
Yeah, Derek, you've done a lot of the Sonic 3D stuff that we've done on this show.
Yeah, and I'm the Sonic fanboy of the show, but I won't defend the transition to 3D, because like some of the games story-wise have been good, but gameplay is like, oof. They don't compare to those classic Genesis games.
They don't. Part of the problem, I think, was Sonic in particular suffered from this 2D design and momentum system. It didn't have a lot of places to go. Whatever you did, you had to make sure you were fast, and it had to be kind of chaotic and fast. Because in retrospect, as much as I love those 2D games, they were kind of chaotic. They were mostly about getting to a certain point where you could then do a really wicked run of 3 loops and a giant dive, and then maybe you'd slow down to, you know, avoid some spikes or something, and then you're off to the races again. And something like Mario was already methodical, a little more slow, a lot more slow, in fact, you know, Sega based a lot of their advertising around the idea that they were fast and Nintendo was slow.
Blast processing.
Yeah, all that.
They do what
BS.
Nintendo don't.
Yeah, exactly. That stuff is so silly, but it's great because, you know, it created this great rivalry. But I think it made it so Nintendo had room to breathe and figure out where they really wanted to go with stuff. And the Sonic team was just like, we don't know what to do here.
Yes,
and so
Sega
they went
really dropped the ball in that era, from, you know, the 32X to the Saturn, and then to the Dreamcast, which the Dreamcast should have been one of the best consoles of that generation. But man, they just fumbled it so badly.
Yeah, it had potential. I really thought that was going to be the rebirth of all things Sega, and I was already kind of a Sega fanboy, but
yeah,
the you know, their inability to kind of maintain the momentum, get the third parties on board, and all of that kind of spelled the end of things. But on the other hand, you know, there were some weird attempts in the middle, like we talked about Sonic 3D Blast, I think it's called.
Yeah,
you remember that? That's weird. Isometric top-down thing that kind of met halfway.
It was like a hybrid 2D,
yeah,
3D.
And it's okay in retrospect. Like, I played a ton of it this last week. It's all right. It's not, you know, great by any stretch, but at least it felt like they were maybe saying, okay, well, we do have to explore other methods here, or else we're going to find ourselves making 2D Sonic games for the rest of our lives. I think if they'd have just held out a little longer and let the 3D thing calm down some, they would have found there's a huge fan base that were like, you know, we're happy to have you scrolling left to right. It's fine. Just keep doing that. And today they make good ones today.
I don't think you can bring Sonic into a 3D world, because the whole point of Sonic is going fast through all the, you know, the different platforming that he does. When you try to put that speed into a 3D environment, it just does not work.
Yeah, they painted themselves into a corner. And both those adventure games didn't do it for me, for a lot of reasons. The main reason it didn't do it for me was the horrendous 90s voice acting anime garbage that they inserted into that thing. Whereas Nintendo was smart. They said, look, what if Mario said, woohoo, and let's go a couple of times? And that's all the voice we give him. You know, he's not going to be Chattermouth McGee. He's just going to say a couple of things here and there. Brilliant. That was a brilliant move. It was the right thing to do.
Everything in the 90s had to be extreme and rad, dude. You know?
Yeah. Well, they effed up when they did that, and they shouldn't have done it. But anyway, it's just so, like, stuff like that. This stuff's only a thing in retrospect, right? You can't think about it during the time. At the time, it was just like, oh, what's Sega doing, or what's Nintendo doing? But nowadays, it's like you can see the clear path that things went and why they went the way they went. And even more so how we look back on those two consoles. And I just think they're some of the ugliest, you know, not good games.
Yeah.
That was the puberty of the gaming industry. And it was an ugly time.
Yeah.
Zits and all.
I think that's the best analogy I've ever heard. That was the puberty of the video game stage.
Yeah.
I just can't
awkward,
go back.
You know, it was important. Like, these were important steps, but it was an awkward, ugly time for everybody.
Such a weird half step. Like, just because of that Nintendo 64 controller alone, I can't, it's hard for me to go back and play those games because my right thumb just wants to control a right thumbstick camera so badly. And it's just, it's not there. It's not there.
Yeah,
and my brain can't handle it.
As much as we all like or at least I like the GameCube controller. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I quite liked it. But even it had this problem of, what are we doing with the right hand? Why is there not a real stick there? Why is it that funky little C button stick thing or whatever? So dumb.
But we had you on this show tonight because we want to do our top 5 list. But before we go into that, we usually do our news segment. We're just going to do one story because this screamed you to me. And this was brought to us. This story was submitted to us by Armez Jackson. And if you have a story you'd like us to cover, send them to nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. And I know how much you love chorecore games.
Love them.
And I know how much you hate horror games.
I do. They scare me. I'm a wuss.
Well, now we have a weird hybrid of the two. From NintendoLife.com, Ravenous Devils is a psycho horror cooking simulator coming to the Switch.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Says quite a lot of video games are violent as we aim for headshots or pummel thugs, though Ravenous Devils still finds a way to push buttons in a different way. It's a game that describes itself as a psycho horror cooking simulator and makes sure you really deal with the violence on offer. Playing out like a grisly horror movie concept, you run a pub and tailor business in 19th century London, and due to spiraling meat and resource prices, you obtain materials through other means. The game seems to play out as a real-time resource management strategy and is undoubtedly rather gnarly. 18 plus.
Gnarly. Nice term. I like it.
So you're going to be making meat pies, sausages, and steaks made out of human flesh.
I'm pretty sure. Give me the exact title of the game again, because I think I've seen this on Steam or something.
It's called Ravenous Devils.
Maybe not. I don't know where I saw something very similar to this. Maybe I'm thinking of the one that was. I know what it is. I'm thinking of one where you have to run a morgue, and it's all very chorecore, like the car mechanic simulator style, where check the legs, look in the eyes, like it's all very mechanical. But then weird stuff happens, like a door opens you didn't expect, or a worm crawls out of some dude's head, or the horror thing. And I was like, no thanks, I'm good. I don't need to play this game ever. I'm not going to do it. The one you're describing though might just be weird enough of a combination that I would give that a shot. I might try it. I'm not saying I'd buy it, but I'd try it.
Well, if someone buys this for you, will you stream this on your Frogpants channel?
Yes. So here's the deal. I have this rule you may be familiar with. If somebody, so I don't spend hard-earned money on horror games, but if someone buys me a horror game, I will play it. If it's on Game Pass and enough people beg me, maybe. But yeah, I ain't putting real money down. Forget it. No,
those are some of my favorite videos, is watching you play games like the Resident Evil 2 remake, which you still have to do half the game. You're still not finished. So
well, that's what John and everyone else seems to think. My take on that is I get why they say it. There's a whole other alternate playthrough with the girl. Some of the scenes are the same, a lot of it's different. I totally take their point, but I feel like I got my time out of that thing, and I don't think I'm going back. Those remakes are legit scary. They
still have a whole other storyline to go through, though.
I guess so. I mean, that's what John keeps trying to tell me. Here's the thing, though.
John on this one. We're gonna get you to do the rest of that game.
Oh, story is a generous word, though, don't you think? I mean, these things are so cheeseball and lame, but whatever. They're like, I have a lot of respect for that series and scary games in general. I have a huge amount of respect because of what they actually do to me. But when I play, or when I see a scary movie, like a horror movie, no problem. Zero issue. Don't care. Not a big deal. I don't care if it's the scariest thing ever. Even the most disturbing things I've seen in the last few years, like, I don't know, Midsummer or Hereditary or something. They're scary, but I don't care. I could be in a dark room by myself. No problem. I'm all good. What it is about video games, I don't know, man. I think it's because in movies, I have zero control over the stupid characters that do everything. And so I just know whatever's happening is happening. But when I'm in it, I'm in charge. So I have to decide if I'm going to that room or not, or if I'm going to fight back or run away or whatever the million choices are. And I do not like that at all. I don't like being in charge of my destiny in a video game like that. So
you don't like horror games, do you, Derek?
I mean, they're not my favorite. Like, they don't particularly bother me. It's funny. I have more of the opposite view that you do, Scott. Like, horror movies can still kind of make me squirm a little bit. Like, not as much as they did when I was younger, but I can usually play a horror game. Like, they're not my favorite genre, but they don't really bother me.
Yeah, I think it probably obviously just depends on whoever. I know people that can play horror games and just kind of chuckle at them. John on my show Core is like that. He can just play these things and kind of grin the whole time. But you put him in front of a real horror movie and he totally loses it. So I think I just got some kind of weird opposite problem. I don't know what's going on.
I'm good with both, but I think that's just probably I'm a closet psychopath or something.
Yeah, you're like a crazy guy who give him an axe and He'll do stuff that you don't want him to do. So yeah, it's
The
totally fine.
the only horror game I ever could not finish was Silent Hill 2. I don't know what it was about that game, but it started to give me nightmares, and I couldn't handle it anymore.
I couldn't do Silent Hill. Well, I don't know how much this story's been around, but Silent Hill 1, even back in the day, that crusty ass looking, terrible looking video game on an old console. I had to play that with the lights on. And at one point, I was in alternate, the whole premise of that game is like there's the world and then there's this alternate hell world. It reminds me of like Pinhead or something, or what are those movies called? Can't think of
the
Hellraiser.
Yeah,
Hellraiser. There you go. It's like Hellraiser, where it's like a rusty, horrible version of real life, and Xenobites walking around and all that. But in this case, I was in the alternate universe in some kind of jail. I was on my own, just walking around, and I heard bottles smashing somewhere nearby, not on screen. And I went, no, that's it. I put the controller down. I reached forward and I pushed that big fat PS1 button, turned it off. Took the disc out, laid it on the carpet, stood up, left the lights on, went upstairs, got in bed, all the lights all the way upstairs left on. My wife comes in, goes, what's going on? And how come the dogs are barking? I go, I don't know, but I'm not going out there. You're going to have to take care of it all. And I was like rolled over. And that was it. I couldn't do it. And it was just a stupid, freaking jittery looking garbage polygon, horrible PS1 game. Yeah. And it did that to me. So, imagine what something like Resident Evil 7 did to my heart and soul for the many hours I played through that.
See, I couldn't play Silent Hill 2. I couldn't finish it, but I love Silent Hill, the movie. I thought the movie was great.
Yeah, it was better than it should have been. I can tell you that. Like that should have been total, like, Uwe Boll level garbage, and it was actually pretty good.
I could watch that movie right now.
Yeah, it was all right.
Don't ever watch Uwe Boll movies. If anybody listening to this, don't watch Uwe Boll movies. I have a friend of mine. I took him to see, I asked a friend of mine, Pete, who's been friends with me for 20-something years now, and I begged him to go see House of the Dead with me in the theater. Man. He will not let me live it down to this day. At least weekly, he yells at me for making him go to that movie with me.
Yeah, you're probably not the best friend he ever had for that.
That movie was terrible.
Yeah,
it was one of the worst movies ever.
Yeah.
But before we go into our topic for tonight, Derek, you want to do the shout-outs, our Patreon shout-outs?
Absolutely. As always, we'd like to shout out our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/nerdcaveretro. We want to shout out Daniel Salmon, Tyler Watson, AxeBlade07, Armez Jackson, Hand Solo, Carlos Longoria, a.k.a. I Am the Rampage, Steph Sergeant Sketch, Gus and Penny, Matthew Salmon, Mike Eveland, Jennifer Eveland, and Mr. Brandon Rutledge. Thank you all so much for your continued contributions to the show. And if you want to be a part of our Patreon community, you get early access to our monthly commentary tracks, ones like X-Men the Animated Series, Batman the Animated Series, movies like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Clue, so many other fun commentary tracks we have in the archive. You get early access to those. And I believe for this month, the patrons decide what we're going to watch, which scares the living crap out of me.
Yeah, they don't have much longer. So if all you patrons, go over to Patreon and let us know what you want us to do this month.
Yeah, we've got only one more weekend.
Week and a half left.
We've got one weekend left in the month. So you gotta get cracking on that. But if you want to be a part of our awesome Patreon community, just head over to patreon.com/nerdcaveretro. And new patrons, be sure to send us your social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, so we can give you a proper shout out.
And tonight we're talking about our top 5 platformers. And me and Derek both have a couple of honorable mentions, runners up. Scott, did you have any runners up you wanted to mention before we go into the top 5?
Yeah, because obviously we're keeping this list in the retro zone, right? Mm-hmm. Like older stuff. I think it bears mentioning that, and this may not be a surprise to YouTube, but we are having a bit of a renaissance with 2D side-scrolling games. Whether we're talking like complex, Castlevania style stuff, but retro in their both look and tone with maybe a few modern ideas. And I feel like we're just having a moment here where there's some really good games like that. So I just wanted to put out there a 2D game you can play now that's newish. that is a platformer, that is a side scroller, and has a lot of Castlevania stuff in it. And it's a game that is totally metal. It's real good, called Blasphemous. And I love this game. It's a little bit dark, maybe for some. I wouldn't call it scary, but dark in a kind of a gothic sort of way. And if you're looking for kind of a, I want to feel like it used to be to play video games, but also I want to play something that was made in the last 5 years. It's one of my favorites right now, and I love it. I play it all the time. So I'll give you that as a kind of runner up. Obviously, there's a million side scrolling platformers back in the day, but I thought it might be fun to drop something that they could pick up right now.
This looks pretty cool. This is it reminds me of something out of Silent Hill.
Oh yeah, very sad. That guy's helmet thing, the big pointy helmet thing. It's he should see him put that on himself. So they have this like pixelated cutscene where he has to put that on his head. You never see his face, but he drops this thing down, and inside it's like an Iron Maiden in there. So it's like full of like sharp, I don't know what all.
Ow.
So he has to kind of like screw it onto his head, and blood comes out of his neck, and it's all like penance, and there's a little bit of a sort of Catholicism overtone to it, except it just kind of sticks with the I don't know, the kind of edge of hell kind of notions. And it does a really, really good job of maintaining that tone throughout the entire experience. It's hard too. So if you're looking for, that's the other reason I think it's kind of old school. It reminds me of difficult platformers when we were all a lot younger, and games demanded more from us out of those cartridges than they do these days. So if you're looking for that kind of challenge and that look and feel, and also just some nice modern sensibilities in some ways, I think that game is real cool. Real
awesome.
good.
I'm gonna check
and
that
it's
out.
on everything too.
Same. It looks really cool.
Yeah.
It's on everything. So if you got a Switch, you got a PC, you got a console, whatever,
Sweet.
It's all that stuff. So there you go.
Awesome. So Derek, you want to go through your honorable mentions?
Yeah, let me get my list up real quick. So in no particular order, Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back, my introduction to the Crash Bandicoot franchise. I remember because I live in Northwest Florida when Hurricanes Aaron and Opal hit in the late 90s. We didn't have power at my house for weeks, so I would stay at my uncle's house, and to entertain myself, he had a PlayStation, and that's where I was introduced to Crash Bandicoot 2. It's still my go-to Crash game. Love the level design, the music's catchy, and it has the sentimental value. Donkey Kong Country, the original, I think, one of the most iconic platformers of all time. The graphics were very much ahead of its time. Big deal when it came out, because Donkey Kong, the character, hadn't been around for quite some time, really since the arcade games, I think. So that was such a big deal, introducing the Kong family like Diddy, Cranky, and others. Level design, really cool. Again, catchy music. Sonic 3, I put this just under Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. Introduced Knuckles, really fun game. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Little unique to the Mario franchise because you play as Yoshi instead of Mario. So it still has that Mario feel, but different enough to give you almost a brand new experience in that universe. And just because I love this game because it's so raunchy and I wish they would make a sequel to it, is Conker's Bad Fur Day for the N64. I love that Nintendo just did not care when this game came out, because it was near the end of the N64's lifespan. And initially you're like, oh, it's going to be another cutesy platformer, and you start playing it and you quickly realize it is not that. So those are my runner-ups.
So Scott, I know you played Donkey Kong Country not too long ago, and I still have my copy for the Super Nintendo, and I play it all the time. But man, that game is it's harder than you remember it being.
It's way harder than you remember. That thing about that game compared to, say, the Diddy follow-up, and then the other one with
Dixie
Jennifer
Kong.
Yeah, I always want to call her Jennifer Kong, and I don't know why. But she had her stupid hair move. But anyway, those two other games I think were just more approachable, and I think that third one's actually maybe my favorite. It's just it was so late in the cycle. We were well into N64 territory. We were into that whole move, and I don't think people even noticed that game coming out, but it was actually really, really strong. But that first one is a torture chamber. It's really hard. And
I've still never beat it to this day.
yeah, I hardly know anyone who has. I know people have. I've seen some speed runs that are really impressive, but
Yeah.
there's a minecart sequence in that game that makes you want to burn down the city. It's horrible.
Yeah.
I think
Horrible
I had a
stuff.
few dents in the wall of my bedroom back in high school when that game came out because of that level.
Well, and that game's another good example of let's bridge the gap between the 2D and 3D eras. So even though it was still a two-dimensional game, it was like this middle ground where it introduced these 3D pre-rendered sprites that were then used in the game, and it gave it this look that was unreal at the time. It was just like, wow, what is this?
Still some of the best looking backgrounds in any 2D game I've ever seen.
Oh, I totally agree with that. Absolutely. I am surprised how much the gameplay holds up, and I think the subsequent 3D follow-ups to the Donkey Kong Country series are excellent games. Like the Wii games are always a little bit hindered, I think, by the, they had to cram Wii motion control crap in them. But the one that was on the Wii U and I think is now on the Switch, I forgot the name of it.
Is it Tropical Freeze?
Might be it.
I think that's
it. That's a really good game and very true to, I think, the spirit of that original game as well. So I think that's a great runner-up. Those are classic. They're awesome.
My runners-up are Broforce.
Oh, dude. Oh,
that's
I love
the game.
Broforce.
That's the game that got me back into retro gaming. Is Broforce. That game is so good.
It's so good, yeah. It's great. What do we talk? I mean, we're not even that far from 05, so it's been, or not 05, sorry, 2015.
Yeah.
So it's been like 7 years, 8 years, whatever.
So man,
that is an amazing game. I love that game.
I can't, if nobody's ever, if you're listening to this and you've never played Broforce, just go try it out. It's so incredibly satisfying to play. I don't have any other word for it. It's satisfying.
Don't sleep on Broforce. Broforce is an incredible game. It's not only great in its own right, it is extremely made for people who love retro gaming. Like they know that in going into it, but they made a game that is really special. Like it's an incredible game all these years later. I wish that dev had made some sort of follow-up to that. They haven't, which is a bummer, but they are doing some other stuff, and that's kind of interesting. But yeah, an incredible game.
If you're a fan of retro gaming and 80s action movies, like this is the game for you. Like that's all there is to it.
Yeah, or even 90s for that matter. They got, they basically have these Broforce versions of every movie character you can think of. So, RoboCop instead of RoboCop, which is just a little pixelated Peter Weller running around as RoboCop.
Yeah,
but they've got like Neo and Nebro. Yeah. It's really great. Like some of that stuff is just
Command
delightfully
Bro.
like just kind of stupid in a way, in a great way. It's really great.
And my other runners up are, of course, Super Mario Brothers. I know it's not in my top 5, but it's the granddaddy of all platformers. It's one of the greatest games ever made.
Yeah, I love it.
Of course, Castlevania, the original Castlevania. I still love that game. Ducktales for the NES is still one of my favorites. And the one that I know people are going to be surprised it's not on my actual top 5, but Super Mario Brothers 3. It's still probably one of my favorite NES games. I think it's an important NES game. It's the bridge between what Super Mario Brothers 2 did and Super Mario World. And it's not a perfect game, but it's damn near perfect for the NES.
Yeah.
But so now we're going to go into the top 5. So do you want, I guess we'll just each take turns. We'll start with Scott and we'll just go down our list and we'll take turns.
So my favorites, you've mentioned some of them. I'll start with number 1 for me. Super Mario World 1 is, I think, my favorite platformer of all time. I think that game is, well, it's widely considered one of the greatest ever. So this is no shock, and nobody's going to be like, "Ooh, look at Scott and his hot take about Super Mario World." But I just feel like that thing transitioned from the 8 to 16-bit era in style, and it's still really fun to play to this day. My favorite Mario Maker levels are the ones people are making based on Super Mario World, and that look and feel. I just think they just nailed the precision gameplay and all that stuff. So that's easily number 1.
If you had bought a Super Nintendo back in the day, and that's all you got was Super Mario World, I feel like you would have got your money's worth for the Super Nintendo just off that game.
Yeah, I agree. And there are people who literally that's all they ever got. You know, like I had friends who got a Super NES and were like, well, this is just my Mario machine. And maybe later it was their Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo machine or something. But to begin with, you know, it was all about that. And man, what a great game. It just gave me so much, to this day, gives me so much joy just to fire that up. I played it recently on the Switch's I don't want to say virtual console, but that's not what they call it anymore. But they're paid, you know, play these old games
Switch
thing.
Online.
Yeah, Switch Online thing, and it's really great. Holds up to this day. So I really love that one. Very close to that. Number 2 would be Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Adventure. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect to like that game at all. I thought I was going to hate that game. But I think that game not only is was wonderful at the time, I think it holds up today in a very special way. I think more than some of those other SNES games we all think of and love. That game still looks incredible. It's got this like crayon art look to it, which is hard to pull off on a 16-bit console, I think. And that still looks really good. The amount of things you get to do and the behaviors of like different mechanics in the world and stuff just really set that game apart. So for me and my money, Super Mario World 2 is just rad. I love that game. Except when Mario cries, because it's the most annoying sound on this planet. It's really annoying. Like, it sucks. It's the worst, but it motivates you to never have him fall off his back. So
I was about to say the same thing. It definitely motivates you.
Yeah, you never want that dude off there, and you'll do whatever it takes to keep him on. So been playing that recently as well and having a really, really good time with it. My third one's going to be a weird one. Not a weird one, just maybe obscure. But there was a game I had on my Apple IIe when I was in junior high called, as my dad's computer, but it was called Hard Hat Mac. Hard Hat Mac was like kind of, well, I won't say it was ripping off the original Donkey Kong, but it kind of was. Like that was a new thing back then, you know, games where you had platforms at all and you'd solve like a screen, go to the next screen, do it, and solve that screen, go to the next screen. That kind of structure that was Donkey Kong, that's kind of what Hard Hat Mac is. The difference is you were this little construction dude with a hard hat, funny enough. And you did all kinds of wacky stuff in there. It's a difficult game to describe, but anyone who's played it will know that it was pretty special for what it was. And if you had a Commodore 64, you probably had it. If you had the like I said, either the Apple II or Apple IIe, they both were famous for being hard hack Mac machines. And I don't know if I ever saw it go anywhere else. It always felt kind of indie and small.
Yeah, I had a Commodore 64, but I don't remember that game. We had the Apple IIes in our computer lab in my elementary school, but the only thing we ever got to play was Hangman and Oregon Trail. That's all we ever played.
Yeah, it's an unusual game that you're not going to find anywhere. And if you're in a school where the teachers of the lab have it super locked down, you're kind of going to be hosed anyway. So
yeah, but I was in 3rd grade, scared to death I was going to die of dysentery. So I don't know.
So that's 3. Number 4, I'm going to give it to kind of an odd one, and I hope this can still count. But I don't know if you guys played it. It's a newer game. It's not super old. It's called Celeste, and this game is retro gaming made new. So if you looked at it and somebody said to you, hey, that game was made in 85, trust me, you'd believe them. It looks old, but it wasn't. It was made not that too many years ago. Basically, your job is to take this character, her name is Madeline, and you got to climb a mountain and beat all your fears to do it. Think Super Meat Boy levels of difficulty.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The screenshots of this looks very Super Meat Boy-ish.
Yeah, it is very much so. It's difficult, I think, in all the right ways. And it's got an amazing story connected to it, which I don't want to give anything away about because I think it's just rad. So yeah, if I was to, pull one a little bit like Broforce, it's like, it's newer and it's whatever. But to me, that game exemplifies what a great 2D platforming experience can be like. Despite the difficulty spikes, it's just a joy to play.
As long as it's not as hard as Super Meat Boy, that game gave me panic attacks. That game was so
Gave
hard.
a lot of us panic attacks.
Yeah. I mean, I played, I don't know how long I played Super Meat Boy. I almost beat that game. Didn't quite. But my kids all claim this is the first time they heard me swear real loud. And it may be true because I remember being so pissed at that freaking game. I just about threw my 360 through a window at one point. It was just insane. And they've never quite gotten back to that. What made that series great. But anyway, all right, you ready for number one here?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. I think then I was really tempted, by the way, to go, but this other game's not quite retro, it's not whatever, but I decided to go way back. And for me, the best of all time is Super Mario Brothers 3. Now, I will say the 3 was kind of late in the life cycle of the NES. And I was annoyed with it at the time because I didn't like the art changes they were making. 2 was just weird and wasn't even really a Mario game. They, just kind of painted it up to look like Mario and resold it. Forgot the name of the original, the Japanese game.
Doki Doki Panic.
Doki Doki Panic.
There it is, Doki Doki Panic. Is that why that new literature club thing is called Doki Doki Literature Club?
I don't know what Doki Doki stands for in Japanese.
I'm not sure either.
Wonder if that's a reference to that, because that thing's also a big troll move. That game, it's meant to be. You think it's one thing, but it's something else. And so I wonder if it just occurred to me maybe they're riffing on that. I don't know, but anyway, so I kind of just gave it the back of my hand, didn't think about it, and didn't play it. And by then was also moving on to some Sega stuff, and I was just like, whatever, I'm not playing a new Mario game. And I really blew it off, and that was a mistake. My rediscovery of it was actually on the Game Boy Advance on an SP. I picked up Game Boy Advance, Super Mario Brothers Advanced 4, it was called, but that was Super Mario Brothers 3. So their numbering was weird, but that game included a revamped sort of updated, you might call it remastered, I suppose, in today's terms, version of Super Mario Brothers 3, as well as the original Super Mario Brothers single screen competitive co-op thing you used to do with you and Luigi.
Yeah.
And they buffed up all the graphics of all of it to feature Super NES, or in this case, Game Boy Advance style graphics, slow scrolling backgrounds, deeper color depth, more pixels per character, all those sorts of things.
It was probably the same thing that they used for the Super Mario All-Stars.
Yes, a lot. In fact, it's just like that, I think. I think it's almost the exact same process.
It is.
Yeah. So that's where I discovered the gameplay of that game and regretted never playing it. It was so good, and I loved every second of it. And I still play it today, and I'll play it on, wherever I can get my hands on it. I kind of prefer that version though, because that's what I'm used to looking at. So when I see the old NES one, I'm like, ooh, this does not age very well. Just a lot of blinky and slow down and whatever. They were really pushing what the NES was capable of.
Rampage in the chat room said, according to Google, Doki Doki is the sound of a beating heart.
Oh, well then, so you got two totally unrelated Doki Doki games then, I'm guessing.
So Beating Heart Panic is what
nice.
Super Mario Brothers 2 was.
Yep, and Birdo. We got Birdo out of that game.
Shy Guys.
But he's pretty great. But anyway, Shy Guys, that's right.
Yeah.
That's where they started, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are legit, legit Mario dudes now. They live on, as does Birdo in my heart. Anyway,
I use Shy Guys when I in Mario Kart. That's my favorite characters to use.
They're pretty great. I like them because they're just basically ghosts with the face of those things and spirited away to eat the furniture and throw it up. What's that thing called?
I don't
Whatever
remember.
that's called.
I've been wanting to watch that movie. I think they're doing a Fathom event for that movie.
Oh, are they? That makes sense. People love that movie. I found it disturbing and difficult to watch, but whatever. But anyway, so that one really still to this day, even though I have this weird relationship with it, it's just a masterful version of what Mario is and can be. And I truly, every time I play a 3D one, I love Odyssey. I love all the new 3D ones. We're talking 2D today, so this would be a different list if we were talking 3D, but I love them all. I think Mario 64 is an incredible moment in gaming history, and was the gap that bridged, or the bridge that, no, how do I put this? That's the game that bridged the gap
Yeah.
in 3D platforming 100% all the way, and deserves all the credit it gets. But if we're talking 2D, even the 3D games to me have notions and tastes of 3 in them. Like I'll play Odyssey and go, well, this overworld bit here reminds me of the first time I played 3, or whatever. Playing World had that, also had the overworld and everything, but there's something about 3. There's DNA in there.
Oh yeah,
that got carried throughout the series, and I love that.
Me and Derek have discussions about this all the time. Like, I always flop back and forth on what's my favorite, Super Mario 3 or Super Mario World. But I think, like you said, it's the DNA of everything we know about Mario now started in 3.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think it's a one heck of a game and worth playing today in 2022. These all are, but I feel like those top 5, I'd be happy on a desert island with all those in my hand. That'd be great.
What about you, Derek? You want to go down your list?
Sure. So my number 5, and it's funny because Jason and I had this discussion when we decided we were going to do this list. He asked me if I considered this game to be a platformer, and I said yes, because it has platforming elements in it. But Super Metroid is my number 5. To me, still the pinnacle of the Metroid series, with Metroid Prime being a very close second. But when I think of that franchise, I picture Super Metroid. It has everything from improved gameplay from the original. The graphics still hold up. The colors look beautiful. And this is from a time when we're far from 1080, definition.
Mm-hmm.
It still holds up, looks great, plays really well. It's a game that I can just sit down and just get immersed in anytime. And
I agree.
It's been that way since the 90s.
I'm kind of a Metroid Fusion guy, but
oh, love that game.
Yeah,
so underrated.
I can't deny how important Super Metroid is, though. And if we were talking, hey, Metroidvania is your top 5, Super Metroid, Metroid Prime, and maybe even what's that one? There's another. Oh, even the new Metroid. I would probably put those all on my. I'd be out of room. I'd have all 5 would be Metroid games. I love them so much. They're so good.
That new one is so damn hard.
Yeah, it's hard. They added an easy mode. They patched it, so you can now run through that whole thing on an easy mode, which some people are grumbly about, but I'm all for it. I'm like, dude, that game's freaking hard. Like, make it slightly easier, please. Would be nice.
Yeah. My number 4 is Donkey Kong Country 2. We talked about the original a little while ago. As much as I love the first one, and it probably has a little more sentimental value to me, I find myself, if I play a Donkey Kong Country game, I go back and play 2 because it might be a cop-out, but it's not as frustratingly hard as the first one is. But the music's a little bit better. I like the level design a little more. I like the story of trying to rescue Donkey Kong. I like the kind of pirate theme that you have, that follows you throughout the game. To me, it's the pinnacle of the Donkey Kong Country series. And as you mentioned earlier, Scott, even the newer games are great, but I go back to Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest any day.
It's very good. The third one edges it out, like I mentioned earlier, but those 2 games are great. They perfected the formula. They were criminally underplayed at the time because kids had moved on. People had moved on to N64s at that point, or at least started to, and it felt like, well, I'm not buying a SNES game. That's an old console now. But in retrospect, they're amazing games. They're so good.
I reviewed the third one a while back, and I hadn't played it probably since it originally came out, and it was much better than I remembered. Like, I actually thoroughly enjoyed going back and playing 3.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's very good. My number 3, it's my only 3D game on the list, but to me, it's 3D platforming perfection, and that is Banjo-Kazooie, developed by Rare. And I know Mario 64 gets a lot of credit for laying the groundwork of what a good 3D platforming game is, and deservedly so. But to me, Banjo-Kazooie has everything I want in a 3D platformer. It's got an unbelievable variety of levels, from a pirate cove to being inside a giant garbage masher to being at an old shipyard, fun collectibles. I love the Banjo-Kazooie universe, and I even think Banjo-Tooie was extremely underrated, even though much like Conker, it came out near the end of the N64 lifespan, so everyone had kind of moved on from it. But the Banjo series, I wish Rare would go back and make a true Banjo-Kazooie 3, because I can play this game any time and just be thoroughly satisfied.
Yeah, those games are good. I don't know if you played the 360 redos. The 360 has remasters of that, and those are also available on Game Pass now, even on a Series X or PC, and they are freaking great. Even like the newer one they made, Nuts and Bolts, an excellent game, very different game, like a very different approach. In some ways, it's like, this thing we described with 3D Sonic Blast, or we talked about I don't know, game like Super Mario 2, even where he's pulling up turnips and throwing them at Birdo. These are weird ideas, but sometimes weird works, or at least gives us a minute to do something a little bit different. And I thought Nuts and Bolts did that. But yeah, those games are classic for a reason. I agree with you. I do feel like there's no Banjo-Kazooie without Mario 64.
Agreed.
Because there's a line there of like, they launch with Mario 64, it blows everybody's mind. Now the world can see what's possible in 3D, and what can be improved, because there's a lot of camera stuff that needed improvement from Mario 64. And Banjo swooped in a couple years later and said, yeah, so here's our improvements. And they killed it. It was amazing. It's a great game.
When Jason and I have talked about this numerous times, it's a shame that Rare and Nintendo don't work together anymore, because that was just the perfect marriage of developers. They just made so many great games together.
Yeah, I wish I don't know, Microsoft's probably willing, but I do wish kind of that stuff had sort of stayed where it is. Although, I don't know, Microsoft seems really interested in turning Rare into a great developer again. If they can do that, I'll be happy.
I have a feeling that Microsoft is way more willing to work with Nintendo than Nintendo is to work with Microsoft.
Or anyone else for that matter. Yeah. The Microsoft's basically said, look, we'll put our stuff everywhere. Who wants us? And Nintendo's like, that's weird. We're doing our own thing, and we're bad at internet, so goodbye. And just is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
My number 2 is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. The pinnacle of 2D Sonic, in my opinion. It took what makes great sequels great is when you take the foundation that the original lays and you add enough to where you're not playing a completely different game, but enough to add to the experience of the first one. And I really like Sonic 1, but 2 is just on another level, and it's very important to the Sonic franchise. It introduces the character of Tails, who has become very important to the Sonic franchise. But the graphics are just a little bit better. The level design is, to me, far better than Sonic 1. And we talked about it earlier, the 2D Sonic games are chaos, because unlike Mario, you just run through a level as fast as you can, unless you're trying to collect all the Chaos Emeralds, and then you have to stop to go through the special stages. But fun boss designs, great music tracks, beautiful graphics still to this day, very bright and vibrant. I love Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and to me, it is very unlikely that this will ever not be my favorite Sonic game of all time.
I think that's fair. That game was pretty rad, and the 2-player stuff was pretty innovative as well.
Yeah.
You could argue. I think you could argue that the series maybe peaked there. As much as I like the addition of Knuckles later, and there's some other stuff I like about the series, I think that and Sonic CD are the high points for me. Amazing.
CD
game.
is very good too.
Yeah.
Very good game.
Yeah.
Number 1 is Super Mario World, for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned earlier, Scott. It was the perfect bridge between the NES and the Super Nintendo. From the moment, and this still happens to this day, when I turn that game on and you hear that dun, 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 I just my ears perk up and it makes me smile. Like I can, you know how you have those certain games that you can almost flash back to where you were 20, 30 years ago when you played it for the first time. I can remember the layout of my old room in the first house I lived in playing Super Mario World.
Oh yeah. It was
And
magic, man. That game was
yeah,
magic when it came out. So good.
it's Jason and I use this term quite often, the Nintendo magic.
Yeah.
And I can't think of, maybe Link to the Past is the only other one I can think of that has that perfect Nintendo magic. You introduce the character of Yoshi, beautiful, bright, vibrant graphics, and I especially notice it, even now on the Switch. There's just, I can't say anything bad about Super Mario World. Like, to me, it is the perfect platforming game.
Yeah, it's very good.
Takes me, like you said, that opening that opening bit just takes me right back to Christmas morning 1991. Playing that for the first time, just seared in my memory.
Yeah, it's hard to beat those kinds of experiences, and it's what makes retro so fun is these moments that are just burned in your head. That game is one of those games, and you can hear it today and go, I'll play that all over again right now. Let's go. I'm ready. Yeah.
All right, for my number 5 is, of course, Ninja Gaiden for the NES. I love
look
that
at
game.
you going all hardcore right out of the door. I like it.
That game was my white whale for 30 years trying to defeat that game. I defeated it for the first time like 3 years ago, and I started speed running it, and I entered a speed running competition last year before. I think my time was like 23 minutes, 41 seconds. And I played it a few weeks ago offline, and I know I defeated it in less than 20 minutes. So I'm going to try to start doing some more speed runs online to see if I can get below 20 minutes. If I can get below 20 minutes, I'll be happy.
That's amazing. That game's really hard, man.
Yeah,
really
it
hard.
is.
The game is a lot of just, the secret to that game is just don't stop. Just do not stop. Just keep going. And I would highly recommend watching some tutorials on how to defeat the final boss, because there's 3 stages to that boss fight. And if you die on any one of those stages, you get sent all the way back to the beginning of that last level. It's terrible, but it forces you. You're so angry at that point. You're like, I'm going to finish this crap.
Yeah. No, that's good. I admire anybody who can beat Ninja Gaiden. I feel like those games were made to make your life miserable.
Oh, yeah. But it's so good. The controls are just so tight, and just, I don't know, the music. Every stage had a different theme to it. It was just such a well-made game. They hated children back then by making the final boss so hard. Number 4, we got Mega Man 2. I love Mega Man 2 so much, and it's one of those games that it's not as hard as a lot of the other Mega Man games, but it's all just paper, rock, scissors. That's all it is. If you can master which boss to do first and use that boss's powers on, the next boss, like what order to do those bosses in, it's not that hard of a game. Number 3 is Goblin Sword. And me and Derek both love this game. Have you ever played this game, Scott?
No. Why is that not? There's something vaguely familiar about it, but I don't think I know what that is.
It's an indie game that came out. When did it come out, Derek? Like 2019, I think.
Yeah, 19 sounds right.
It's available on the Switch. And it was released in, for iOS, it was released in 2014. It came out on the Switch in 2020, February of 2020. This game is so fun, and just the controls are like butter. The double jump, and it's everything that you want in a platformer. The controls you want in a platformer. And the finding the little secrets in each level, trying to get all the chests and all the diamonds and everything, and then going back and upgrading your character. It's got like RPG elements to it where you get better armor and better swords. I just can't recommend this game enough. I play it all the time.
That sounds like a good time. I don't know why I haven't heard of this. I usually stay pretty close to those kinds of small games, and
I think
I've
you'll
never heard
love
of
it.
Yeah, you should play it.
It's
Okay.
so good.
I'm in.
Number 2, of course, Super Metroid. I had to send Derek that text a couple of weeks ago. I was like, does this count as a platformer? And yeah, we agreed that it does, even though it's the beginning of that, the Metroidvania thing where there's a lot of there's maze work, there's a lot of backtracking, but there is a lot of platforming. The game is gorgeous. The gameplay is perfect. It's one of the best games you can get for the Super Nintendo. I think it's in that top 5 games that you have to have for the Super Nintendo. And then, of course, my number 1. I always go back and forth between Super Mario Brothers 3 and this game, but it's Super Mario World. There's just something about this game that's just absolute perfection when it comes to controls, the way the game looks, the way it plays. I could play this game there's no point in my life where I would never say, no, I don't want to play Super Mario World. I will play this game till the day I die and be happy with it. It's Nintendo perfection.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we all kind of landed in the same zone on that. It's as good as they've ever done in that 2D arena, without question. And it rivals the 3D stuff.
Oh,
like
yeah.
as much as I like Where Mario's Gone, 3D Super Mario 3D Land on the 3DS is a high watermark for me. Odyssey's a huge deal. Like, I love those games and I would recommend to anybody to play them. But if you're like, do you want like the raw primordial ooze that is amazing Nintendo Magic platforming? Play World, man.
Yeah.
It's good.
And 64 was very influential on the future of the 3D Mario series, because when you beat Odyssey, you can go back and to the Nintendo 64 castle, at the end of that game.
I hung out there way too long.
Yeah.
I spent a bunch of time there.
Me too.
Yeah. For no good reason, by the way, for the record.
I just didn't want to leave that game. I was having so much fun with it. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want it to be over.
That game if I had any complaint about Odyssey, it was that it was too short, and I didn't do a complete 100%. So I could go back even today and try to get every last, what were they No, they weren't stars. What were they this time?
What was it?
They weren't hats. You had your hat, but you threw it at stuff that was. It works like the stars, but what were they?
I don't remember now.
Crap.
I'm looking
whatever this game's version was of getting stars. I never did 100% that, but part of me.
Moons. That's right.
There you go.
Well, I know we're up on the hour, but we have some listener top 5s. Do we have you just for a few more minutes, Scott?
Yeah, no problem. Let's do it.
So these are from our listeners that we threw out on our Discord and our Patreon. To start us off, we have Mr. Carlos Longoria. I am the Rampage, who says, I'm going to keep this in the 16-bit era to make my list easier. Number 5, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Number 4, Kirby Superstar. I don't remember Kirby Superstar.
I forgot all the Kirby games are so good. I feel bad that my list doesn't have a Kirby game on it.
It's funny. I didn't play Kirby until I reviewed Kirby for the Nintendo about a year or so ago, because I always had this notion that Kirby was like a kid's game, and it is, but it's so fun.
No, it's so good. That new one, by the way, is really good too. Like,
I really want to play it.
I bought that the second it was available. It's like, I can't wait to play more Kirby. Kirby is ridiculous. Kirby is cute. Kirby is weird.
Yeah.
Kirby is life. I love Kirby.
His number 3 is Donkey Kong Country 1. Number 2 is Super Mario World. And his number 1 is Mega Man X1. I was not a fan of the Mega Man X games.
They were okay. I just thought they were so punishingly hard. I couldn't play those games.
Yes,
I tried.
Honorable mentions are Super Castlevania 4, Earthworm Jim 1 and 2, the Genesis versions, and Rocket Knight Adventures.
Those are good games. Rocket Knight was cool.
From Mr. Picola Asian himself, Brandon Rutledge. He says, honorable mentions, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Super Mario 64, Mega Man 2, Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. I'm surprised that one didn't end up on the list here somewhere. And Donkey Kong Country. His number 5 is a tie between Super Mario World and Super Mario Bros. 3. Ninja Gaiden, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, That one actually is really good. That's one of
It
the
is
only,
super
they're
good.
fun.
one of the
Yeah.
few Wii games that I really, really liked.
They're excellent. You know, I didn't think of that one either because it plays 2D as well. It would have
Yeah.
been perfect for this list. But it's the version that was on the Wii U got remastered for the Switch, and that version's great.
Mm-hmm. I
Highly
haven't played
recommend
that
it.
one. I need
It's
to.
real good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an awesome game. They're all good, but I love those. Those are excellent games.
Number 2, we have another vote for Mega Man X. Maybe I need to go back and reevaluate the Mega Man X games. And then number 1 is Super Castlevania 4. And he says, peace out and play Final Fantasy, Jason. And I do have to say that we did get from an anonymous donor this week. You know who you are. Sent us 500 bones to the
Jeez.
show. And demands that I play Final Fantasy VII. So I will play a Final Fantasy game here soon.
You gonna play the old one, or are you gonna play that remake?
I think I'm going to do the old one because they have it available for the Switch. And
Yeah.
I was back and forth between that and the remake for the PS4. So I'm going to have to flip a coin, see which one I'm going to get.
That remake, I've been tempted to get on the PS5 and just play the damn thing, but
Yeah.
part of me is like, do I really want to play a big long square game right now? But also, you earlier, the way you said it, sounded like you called it Final Fantasy Jason, and I'm all about a game called Final Fantasy Jason.
Right.
I've never played a Final Fantasy game, and we have a running joke with our listeners that I will never play a Final Fantasy game ever.
Wow. Yeah, I'm back and forth on that stuff. I'll play
Yeah.
here and there. I played the MMO, which I quite like, but I'm not like super hooked into it or anything.
See, I'm like you. I'm not a big fan of anime, and it seems very anime-ish to me.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it is like very anime. If you don't like anime storylines and characterizations and stuff, and that's a real showstopper for you, you're probably not going to like Final Fantasy. Any Final Fantasy.
I love your
they're all that way.
I love your anime impression too. The
Yeah. Anytime that starts happening. In fact, I was playing Sonic Adventure the other day, and that game starts with him going, irritated me. It's like I was hoping he'd say, "I need a chili dog" or some other dumb '90s rad thing, but instead he said, and it annoyed me.
And we have Mr. Tyler Watson, who comes in at number 5 with Super Castlevania 4. Said it's may not be the best game in the franchise, but it's still his favorite and his introduction to the series. Let's see. Number 4 is Mega Man 2, arguably the best game in the series. I will wholeheartedly agree with that. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. Said DKC 2 vastly improved upon 1, more and bigger stages, more bonus stages, new animal companions, and even a hidden challenge world that would give you the secret ending if you complete it. I didn't know that game had a secret ending to it.
I didn't either.
Yep.
Yeah, that's news to me.
Number 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Do you have a game that you play for pure relaxation? A game you can just turn off your brain to and enjoy for the pure fun of it? Sonic 2 is just that. I can't relax to Sonic games. Like, how are you relaxing to that?
I mean, I admire if you can relax to a Sonic game. I don't know. I have the wrong Sonic games, I guess.
You're drinking too much coffee, sir.
Yeah.
You have to be wired a little different to be relaxed at a Sonic game.
Drinking too much B-Res coffee, which if you go over and use our code NCR for 10% off of your purchase. Number 1, Super Mario World. What could he say about this game that hasn't already been said? It cements its legacy as the greatest Mario game ever by improving on and adding to the games that came before. It truly showed the gulf between 8-bit and 16-bit and why you needed a Super Nintendo. I couldn't have said it better myself. Like that game, even if you just got a Super Nintendo and that's all you got was that game, it made it worth it. I mean, 100%.
Yeah, system sellers usually is what they call them, and that is the definition of one right there.
And our last one, we have Donner, Party of 5. Number 5, Celeste. He mentioned Celeste there for you.
Celeste is awesome.
Says tough as nails to 100% and deep, beautiful story about mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really something. That game deserves to be played if you've never played it. I don't know if anyone remembers the Towerfall game. It was a 4-player thing that started on the Ouya of all places.
Wow.
But it was a really good game. Like that was maybe the only good game that Ouya had, and it ended up on PlayStation and other places pretty quickly after that. It's all over the place now, but that's that developer, and they know 2D platforming. They're real good.
Oh yeah. Number 4, Hollow Knight, the best Metroidvania of the 2010s. I don't think I ever played Hollow Knight. I don't know if I did or not.
Hollow Knight and I have a weird relationship. I picked it up and tried to play it like 4 times. And every time I don't like it. And I don't know why, because I believe people when they tell me it's the greatest thing ever. I just never have the good time I've been promised with that game. And I don't know why.
I think it might be in my Steam library, and I may have only played it like once. Because
it's on Game Pass. It's like so everywhere now, but
yeah,
it's just a beast. I can't explain it. I wish I liked it more, and I feel bad that I don't.
Number 3 is Donkey Kong Country Returns, a beautifully done return to form Rare should have been proud. I don't remember Donkey Kong Country Returns.
It was that the Wii game?
I think it might have
May
been.
have been.
I think that's the Wii game. That's a good game. Like it's legit a good game. I can't argue with that. I wish that more of those games would get remakes and they would just figure out a way to lose all the stupid motion control stuff if they could.
Yeah, same.
Number 2, Little Big Planet. PlayStation needs to come back with this IP. I can't believe that didn't land on any of our lists because Little Big Planet's was a big deal there for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's just we don't think of it as retro,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his number 1 is Mario Maker 2. It's endless. The content is endless.
That is true. You'll never not be able to play something in Mario Maker unless they turn the servers off, and then you're screwed.
Yeah. So before we go tonight, I did want to ask you, what is your definition of retro? Because me and Derek kind of have a 20-year, like anything 20 years ago and before that is retro to us.
Yeah, to me, so Brian and I have talked about this a lot. We feel pretty strong that anything we're kind of inching toward anything pre 360. So we're almost ready to say it's cool to put PS2, GameCube, and an Xbox original in there.
Still so hard for me to
which
think
is about
of those as retro, though.
It's hard, I realize. Yeah, and I'm the same. This has still been difficult for me. Like, I don't know, because okay, let's look at it this way. 10 years ago, I would agree with you, but we're almost 20 years out on that stuff. So as soon as you're like 20 years out, I feel like you can start doing it, I think. Yeah. But we still stay kind of in the stable of like, really ancient, up through arcade, up through 16-bit consoles. That's kind of our zone. Neo Geo, I guess, things like that. But for the most part, we stay in that zone. But occasionally something will sneak in and you're like, oh man, what's one of the great hockey games of all time? Sure, NHL 94 and all these 16-bit games. But also, if you played NHL Hits on the GameCube, because that game rocked and it was 2002, it's just barely retro enough for me to consider it.
But we're sneaking up on the, when did the 360 come out? Like 2006 or 7?
360 was 05 here in the States. Yeah,
3 more years. 3 more years, and we're 20 years from the beginning of the 360. That feels like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's jacked, man. It's jacked up.
I don't
Everything
like
about
it.
That is jacked.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
Oh man, well, we're at the end of the episode, and Scott, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. We got to have you back more often than 170 episodes in between.
Well, I'd be happy to. I always enjoy being here, and I appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you so much.
So you want to tell everybody where they can find your stuff at?
Sure. If you're looking for another cool retro show to add to your list, the more the merrier, I always say. Go check it out at frogpants.com/free play retro is the name of the show. Make sure you check it out on wherever you get your podcast. So it doesn't have to be the website. You don't have to go there if you don't want to, but see what you think. And if you like that, you might like more of what's going on over there. There's all kinds of shows, all kinds of stuff happening. There's a whole art side to what I do. If any of that sounds interesting, check it out at frogpants.com. And if you're trying to poke me in public, you can find me on Twitter at Scott Johnson.
And I will say that Core has quickly become, over the last couple of years, my favorite gaming podcast. And I love what you guys are doing over there.
Oh, thanks, man. We get that a lot. And I'm really happy to not only hear that, but I'm also really proud of it because that show is, started out as a very specific Heroes of the Storm show. Mm-hmm. And we changed focus when Blizzard changed focus. And made it gaming in general, and it's now the fastest growing thing we do. So I'm really happy to hear that, because we are loving making that show.
I
Really
love
good
the
time.
Dear Martha segments with John. He did one day with it was the Russian version of the Dear Martha, and I was
Yeah.
driving on the interstate. I had to pull over. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
I was laughing so hard I couldn't drive. I had to pull
Yeah.
over. So
He's got away with that stuff, no doubt, and he makes us all laugh constantly. So that, welcome to the club. John's a funny dude.
but yeah, thank you for coming on the show. Go check out everything Scott does. It's all wonderful. And Derek, what's going on with feature presentation?
So it'll be returning May 16th, which is on a Monday. And in the spirit of this show, and as well as your other show, Open Micers, I'm going to be trying out a live format. So I'm going to be live every Monday night on YouTube at 8 p.m. chatting with indie filmmakers. So if you're into that kind of thing, just subscribe to Feature Presentation on YouTube. I'll be posting like a mini episode probably the week before, kind of explaining the format changes and things like that. And if you want to follow the show on social media, at Feature Pres Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Go check out the Open Micers podcast at Open Micers on Twitter. This week's show, we had Laura Faye Smith, the voice of Rosalina in the Mario series, came back to the show so we could do Easter candy tasting, and I think we sent poor Jacob into a diabetic coma for the night. So go check out that show. And I just want to go ahead and say, edible grass, which I have in my hand right here, is the nastiest stuff you will ever eat in your life.
What is that?
It's edible grass for Easter baskets, and it tastes like shredded styrofoam.
That's horrendous.
Consistency. It was disgusting.
Horrible invention.
It's awful.
That's
it's the worst
really
thing
bad.
ever. But I'm going to go ahead and play our music and get out of here. If you'd like to email us, you can email us at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdcaveretro, Instagram and Twitter at nerdcaveretro, and of course individually at jfantastic, at Derek_Diamond, and go follow Mr. Scott Johnson at Scott Johnson on Twitter. ncrmerch.com is where you can go find all of our cool merchandise, our t-shirts, mugs, stickers, magnets, whatever you need. ncrmerch.com, and our Patreon, patreon.com/nerdcaveretro. As little as $1 a month keeps the lights on, and you get those cool commentary tracks that we do every single month. If you can't do that, times are tough. I know money's tight. Leave us a review wherever fine podcasts are given away for free. So Derek, please tell them what it's all about.
May the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.
Yes.
Master Blaster runs Barter Town.
That was a fun episode.
Yeah, it was.
That was great.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you again, Scott, for coming on the show.
Yeah,
And,
thanks so
say
much.
goodbye to everybody on Twitch and that's going to watch this on YouTube later.